I don't hold grudges easily. I never have. But there's a difference between letting go of something and being told it never happened in the first place. And that's the line I've been standing on for the last 6 years. I grew up in a brick colonial in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the kind of house with a wraparound porch and a flag that got swapped out for every season. My parents, Karen and Walter Bishop, were deacons at our church and ran the holiday food drive every November. People in our congregation thought we were the model family. My mother kept a framed photo wall in the hallway. Every school picture, every recital, perfectly arranged. Except mine started thinning out around 4th grade. Not because I stopped doing things, because nobody thought to take the picture. My younger brother Theo is 4 years behind me. He came out of the womb easy, the way some kids just are. Good at sports, good at making adults laugh, the kind of charm that gets forgiven before it's even examined. I don't blame him for any of it, not really. He didn't build the house he grew up favored in, but he lived in it the same as I did, and he got the warm side of it while I got whatever was left over once they were done adoring him. I was the one who got straight A's and never heard about it. I was the one who started babysitting at 12 and had my own savings account by 14. Because some part of me already understood. I'd be paying my own way through everything that mattered. When I brought home a perfect report card in 8th grade, my dad glanced at it over his newspaper and said, "Good, keep that up." When Theo brought home a C+ in algebra after a tutor and 3 weeks of begging, my mother put it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a sunflower and told everyone at church how proud she was that he was really applying himself. I used to tell myself it didn't matter. I got very good at telling myself that. The birthday I need to tell you about was my 19th, a Friday in late September, the kind of crisp fall day Pennsylvania does well, leaves just starting to turn at the edges. I wasn't expecting fireworks. I didn't want a party with a guest list or a car with a bow on it. I just wanted one day where someone in that house looked at me and said, "We're glad you're here." I came downstairs around 10 that morning to the smell of cinnamon and brown sugar, and there was my mother at the kitchen island, piping frosting onto a sheet cake, careful and focused, the way she only ever got when something mattered to her. Theo was perched on a stool next to her, practically vibrating with excitement, dipping his finger in the leftover bowl. There were balloons taped to the chair backs, navy and gold, Theo's varsity colors. For one single second, stupidly, my heart lifted. I thought, maybe this year. My mother looked up, saw me standing there in my socks, and her face lit up, but not for me. "Theo, come look, it's finished." She angled the cake so he could see it properly, written across the top in looping blue letters. "Congrats on varsity, Theo." His tryout results weren't even due for another 2 weeks. They were celebrating in advance. Nobody looked at me. My father came in from the garage carrying a box of party supplies, set it down and said, "That looks great, Karen, he's going to lose it." He kissed her temple. I was standing close enough that he had to step around me to get to the coffee maker. It took almost 2 full minutes before my mother glanced over and said, "Oh, you're up. Want some coffee? Not happy birthday. Want some coffee." I didn't cry. I've never been much of a crier in front of people. That part of me shut off a long time ago. I poured a cup, said I had homework, and went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to them downstairs. My mother humming while she cleaned frosting off a spatula. My father asking if they had enough chairs for everyone coming Sunday. A party. They were planning an entire party. For a tryout result that hadn't even happened yet. On my birthday, I didn't say anything that day. I'd learned a long time before that bringing up the invisible stuff never went anywhere good. My mother would get wounded and defensive, ask why I was always making things about me, and somehow by the end of the conversation I'd be the one apologizing. So I came down for dinner that night, ate my pork chop, said thank you when my dad handed me $20 in a card that said "Happy Birthday, Sweetheart" in his handwriting, and nothing else inside it. I did not get cake. The cake was for Sunday and they needed it whole. That night I lay in bed and let myself actually think, really think, about everything. About the laptop I had to share with Theo and how I did all my college essay applications at the public library after my shift at the pharmacy because he needed it for a project. About the homecoming dress I bought with my own paycheck. Because my mother said money was a little tight this month. The same month they bought him a $400 pair of cleats. About every band concert where I looked out and the seats reserved for my parents stayed empty, and every one of Theo's baseball games where they sat in the front row with a cooler. And then I thought, I'm 19. I'm already in community college on my own dime. I don't actually need permission to leave. I didn't leave that house overnight though. I'm not someone who does things in a blaze. I'm someone who plans. I had almost $6,000 saved from 2 years of working the pharmacy counter and tutoring math on the side. Money I never told them about. Kept in a separate account they didn't know existed. I spent the next month quietly researching transfer programs to 4-year schools in other states, places with strong financial aid for independent students. I told no one. I kept showing up, kept being agreeable, kept being the version of myself nobody in that house seemed to notice was slowly disappearing. Then I got an email from Penn State's main campus, accepted into their communications program with a transfer scholarship that covered most of tuition if I qualified for need-based aid as an independent student. I read the email standing in the pharmacy stockroom on my break, my hands actually shaking. I went into the bathroom afterward and cried for exactly 2 minutes, then splashed water on my face and went back to the register because there was nobody to call. I gave my parents notice the way you'd give an employer notice. I wrote a letter, calm and clear, and left it on the kitchen table early one morning before either of them was up. I told them where I was going, that I had aid lined up, that I'd be okay, that I loved them, and hoped someday we could build something better from a distance. My father called me at work that afternoon. He didn't say congratulations. He said, "You couldn't even talk to us about this first? That's a pretty selfish way to do things, Tess." That was the first time in the whole conversation he'd said my name. I told him I'd had a good teacher in selfishness, and I hung up. I moved into my dorm in January for the spring semester. The first few weeks were quiet. A couple of clipped texts from my mother asking if I had enough blankets. Then even those stopped. I figured they were sulking and gave them room. What I didn't give them was permission to call my financial aid office. I found out from my advisor, a steady, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Calloway, who called me into her office one afternoon holding a folder. Someone had submitted paperwork, claiming I was still a dependent in my parents' household, with documentation, tax-adjacent forms, that looked official enough to trigger a review. If it had gone through, it would have wiped out almost all of my aid. I sat across from her desk and felt something inside my chest go very still and very cold. It took almost 2 months to fight it. Notarized statements, copies of my pay stubs going back 2 years, proof I'd filed my own taxes independently, a written statement from my pharmacy manager confirming my employment and income. I won, kept my aid, but I lost a whole semester's worth of peace doing it, up some nights until 2 in the morning with my roommate asleep across the room, staring at a stack of paperwork and thinking, what kind of people do this to their own kid? What kind of parents would rather see you fail than succeed without them? I didn't tell anyone the details. Not my roommate, not my friends. I just kept my head down. I picked up a work-study job in the university writing center, joined a study group that slowly turned into the first real friends I'd ever had who actually noticed when I had a bad day. I called my grandmother in Hershey sometimes, my father's mother, who never once made me feel like a consolation prize. She'd just listen and say, "Keep your chin up, baby. You're doing the hard part already." And by the end of that first year, my GPA was a 3.8. A professor asked me to help research a piece she was writing on first-generation and independent college students navigating institutional financial aid systems, which felt like a strange, quiet kind of vindication. My parents heard eventually, the way news travels in a small enough world. My mother sent a text that said, "Heard you're doing well up there. Theo made varsity captain. We're really proud of him." I read it twice and didn't respond. The following fall, something in me shifted. I was tired of carrying all of it silently, like it was something to be ashamed of. I started writing, just a personal blog at first, nothing polished, just honest, about growing up in a house where love had conditions attached to it, nobody ever said out loud, about working your way through school on a pharmacy paycheck and an empty bleacher seat, about what it costs to keep going when the people who were supposed to be your floor turn out to be the thing you're falling through. Within a few months, the posts had picked up real traction, tens of thousands of reads, mostly from women writing in to say some version of, "I thought this was just my life. I didn't know there was a name for it. How did you actually get out?" I answered every comment I could. A woman who hosted a small podcast about estranged families reached out and asked if I'd come on as a guest. That episode ended up being one of the most shared in the show's history. My parents heard that too. My aunt sent me a screenshot of my mother's Facebook post. Funny how people only tell one side of a story. We know what really happened. I sat with that one for a long time, drafted 3 different responses, deleted all of them. I realized I didn't need to win an argument with people who'd already decided the verdict before I opened my mouth. I'd already won something bigger than that. I'd built a life. That's the part nobody warns you about. Leaving isn't the finish line, it's barely the start. The real work comes after. Learning how to trust people who aren't trying to extract something from you. Learning to accept a compliment without flinching. Learning to stop shrinking yourself down to take up less space in a room. Those habits don't just disappear because you moved 300 miles away. I still catch myself doing it sometimes, going quiet, making myself smaller. But I also catch the other thing now, the part of me that decided at 19, standing in my socks on cold kitchen tile, that I was going to keep going anyway. I'm 26 now. I graduated with honors, work in healthcare marketing in Pittsburgh, and I rent a 1-bedroom apartment I picked out myself and pay for myself, down to the last cent of the deposit. I have a rescue dog named Biscuit, who barely tolerates anyone but me. I have 3 friends from that study group, who would drive 2 hours at midnight if I called them and needed it. I have my grandmother, who still calls every Sunday evening and always opens with, "Tell me something good." My parents and I aren't close. There have been a few stiff attempts, a Christmas card here, an awkward voicemail there, a birthday card last year signed simply Mom and Dad, nothing written inside. I'm not closed off to the idea of something real someday, if it ever comes with actual honesty and accountability attached to it, but I've stopped waiting on it to come. Theo and I talk sometimes, actually talk now. He told me, a few months ago, that he always sensed something was off growing up, that he carried guilt over it for years without knowing what to do with it. I told him he doesn't owe me that guilt, that he was a kid too, that none of it was his fault any more than it was mine. We're figuring out what a relationships between us looks like without our parents standing in the middle of it. I wrote all this down because I know someone reading it is living some version of it right now. The one who learned to read a room before they even said good morning, the one who got so good at being grateful for crumbs that they forgot the whole table was ever an option. You deserve the whole table. You always did. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't packing up and leaving that house. It was choosing, every single day after, to believe I was worth the life I was building, even on the days when the 2 people who were supposed to believe that first never did. Your story isn't finished. Mine certainly isn't, and the strange, good thing about getting out is that you finally get to decide what happens next.